Ladies and gentlemen, this is El Cochino, Tom Lawler, and I'd like to welcome you to the podcast that puts the lotion on its own skin, LuchaWorld. Bitchin'.
Welcome everyone to LuchaWorld podcast, episode number 119. Fredo Esparza here, and making his LuchaWorld podcast return. It took a pandemic for him to make his way back to this podcast. Kurt Brown, Vandal Drummond, whatever name you know him as, he is back. How are you doing, Kurt?
That's right. I'm doing quite well. I am bravely facing the confines of my own home. Was scared to go out into this pandemic, but I'm bravely grabbing the phone and just kind of barking nonsensically into it, as most of the nation is barking nonsensically. People, please be safe during these strange days.
I like how when this first started, everybody was making comparisons to like some of these far greater tragedies, and how, like, you know, and I'm not talking about necessarily the coronavirus thing, but like what we had to do to like actually like prevent ourselves from dying or you know, contracting this virus, just staying home, and they made it seem like we were like being held prisoners, or you know, we were.
Exactly. Man, people just, but like, I know this is difficult for a lot of us. You know, we can't see as many people as we'd like. And you know me, Fredo, I'm a people person. I miss being around people. I'm gonna say this. It's tough at times, but we have to do this. It's not just our personal health that's at stake, it's other people's health. If you're not going to wear a mask for you, do it for other people, because I know there's a lot of people who are screaming hoax. This is real. Take care of yourself, please.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this podcast, you should be cool wearing a mask. I mean, you know, you are a Lucha Libre fan.
You should be ashamed if you're not wearing a mask
Yes.
while listening to this podcast.
Yes.
I agree.
If we see you in a video complaining at a Costco or at a Walmart or anywhere else that you are not wearing a mask, or that you don't want to wear a mask, we will shame you on this podcast.
We will.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Well, you know, Kurt, so since this happened, I mean, everything's pretty much been shut down, and not just in the United States, but worldwide. And it actually affected Lucha Libre. There are very minimal number of shows, and the shows that are happening are empty arena shows. Have you watched any of those at all? Like any matches?
I have not. I have watched several of the UFC shows that are in empty arenas, and that's a little odd but doable. But I'm having a hard time picturing what pro wrestling would be like in an empty arena. I have heard some people say that AEW shows somehow are making it click a bit, but I know other people who say, like when they watched the WWE WrestleMania, that while they gave it a good shot, it just is, the ambience isn't there. There's something missing.
Well, you know, like with AEW, I think they have some of the guys in the crowd. Like some of their talent is in the crowd, so there's about, I would guess, maybe like anywhere between 20 or so or more people in the crowd.
Yeah.
They're separate. They're not like all standing together, but they're all there.
No, that's good. No, I told you what I think my solution would be. I mean, you know, AEW, WWE, you know, they're not like 1980s wrestling where it's shot in a low budget, you know, at the Boys Club or something like that, or the TV studio. No. They have all the bells and whistles. And in this day of CGI, let me ask you this first, Fredo. Are you old enough to remember those frickin' twisted Sid and Marty Krofft cartoons when we were kids? Not cartoons so much, but like HR Puffin stuff.
Yeah, I remember that. I think that was like the tail. That was like very late, like early when I was like very young. I remember those.
Yes. Little Jack Wilde is in this land of freaky people in animal costumes, and then there was Lidsville, where Butch Packard falls into a land where everybody is a hat. They're not wearing hats. Everybody who lives in that land is a hack.
Well,
They're walking, living, breathing, talking hacks.
you know,
And I thought with CGI being the thing, they should fill entire arenas with all those freaky characters cheering on the wrestlers.
well, you know what's weird is that they haven't done it. Like I would think that like WWE would have done something like that, especially.
I thought they would have too.
Yeah, I mean, I think I watched some of the AAA matches that they've had, the Lucha Fighter series, and they're in like an empty studio, and they actually it doesn't look that bad because it's not a big venue. It looks more like a studio, like you know the old wrestling when you would watch it in studios without the fans. Which I mean, honestly, it's not that bad. But and you know the only thing I was like really you kind of start to wonder like wow this is actually happening is you see this guy in a hazmat suit that has to clean like the microphone whenever like Ali Park asks for the microphone. He cleans it and gives it to him, which I think is pretty cool. But and then they clean the ring and all that. Although I think these were taped previously, so they're kind of they were when they started posting them on YouTube, they were already like a little more prepared than they like they
A little more edited.
yeah, and they have the announcers are separated from each other. You know, the referee is not standing so close to the wrestlers during the matches. He kind of like, you know, gets his, you know, keeps his distance as much as possible. So it's actually, they've actually done pretty good, except some of the matches have really been kind of like not that great. And then others have been good. But, you know, like I said, that's basically what for me with AAA kind of.
That's actually really good because when I was watching the UFC shows, I was a little concerned that the interviewers, and I guess Joe Rogan made a big issue about being able to do this. They were originally going to have the interviewers interview the winning fighters from, you know, the fighter would be in the cage, and then the interviewer would be cage side.
Okay.
Apparently, Joe Rogan did not like doing that, and I think Daniel Cormier, if I'm remembering correctly, backed him on and said, hey, we've all been tested and we're all clean, so why can't we be right next to each other without our pads, you know, our masks and all that stuff? Well, the thing is, you probably aren't, but there are false negatives. There are not false positives on these COVID tests, but there are false negatives. So I'm glad to hear that AAA is taking a little more precautions than UFC is.
Yeah, I mean, you're not really, and you know, to be fair, there's not a lot of shows also right now, so these guys aren't like being around a lot of other wrestlers. Although, you know, like because to me, like wrestlers, they travel so much and they're around other people so far more than the regular people that you know you kind of worry that they might actually get it a little quicker than, or you know they might have a better shot of getting it than you know us who can stay home and not worry about this stuff. But
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, you know, one of the bad things about all this off time is like there's been like the majority of the news has been very obviously sad just because not only are there no shows and we've had a lot of people pass away during the past since this started happening, and it's not been a lot of people from coronavirus. We did have one death in Lucha Libre from coronavirus, but that was here in Los Angeles, and it was somebody that you'd actually. I think, did you get a chance to wrestle with or just be on the same show, right?
I never got a chance to wrestle Cosmos. His name was Rafael de la Torre, but ever since I first saw him wrestle in 1981 at Hotco Plaza, I always thought of him as Cosmos. Cosmos was a really, really talented wrestler, even before I understood you know, the ins and outs of working. When I would watch him wrestle, I could tell that he was taking really good care of his opponent, but he was rough on himself. He loved bumping. I'd never met anybody else who'd done this before, but when he did the toe bait, it looked really cool. He looked like a missile flying through the air and just, you know, practically impaling the guy who caught him. But he told me that, I close my eyes when I dive through the ropes, and he encouraged me to try it. I wasn't going to do it, but it worked for him. Downside is he had a lot of, I don't know what his specific injuries were, but when I was wrestling on the local lucha scene and would see him at shows in his last couple of years as an active wrestler, I could tell his body was hurting. He still looked good in the ring, but you could tell he just wasn't the same. In fact, I met him on the second wrestling show I was on at the Azteca Gym in Bell, California in 1983.
Wow.
And what I remember is he had just had a baby girl, and he was handing out these little candy cigars that said, "It's a girl." So for the longest time, I had my little "It's a Girl" cigar in my gym bag. And by sheer coincidence, I don't think they had wrestling shows at that gym for another 9 years. And that 9 years later just happened to be where Fisico Nuclear had his third pro match. And it just happened that Cosmos was in the semi-main. I can't remember who he wrestled, but he dropped his hair that night. And that same little girl, who is now 9 years old, they did a little angle where she runs in the ring after he gets his head shaved, and she throws a hat over his head to protect her papa. And then just a few weeks ago, I found out that both Cosmos and his daughter both had the COVID virus.
Wow.
Which is just a really weird coincidence, those three things kind of being in my memory. All paralleling one another. The good news is she pulled through. She's probably in her late 30s now, and Cosmos was 62.
How old was he? 62?
62, yeah.
Wow.
62 years old. And he apparently was really sick, was starting to make a recovery. But, and I think we've heard this story in the news, things went south. I guess his kidneys were in bad shape. They started improving, but then other parts of his body were shutting down. And he was always a really nice guy to me. In fact, last time I saw him was when you and I were at that tribute to Gil Ariano, when they were honoring Gil about 4 years ago. And it was weird. I didn't realize that Cosmos and I had not seen each other in over 20 years. And, it was really good seeing him. And he says, last time I saw you was, remember when we worked for that promoter, that crazy guy? And I just looked at him and said, Cosmos, that crazy promoter is like 3/4 of the promoter we worked for. That could be almost anybody. And he said, oh, the guy with the funny, with the grumpy talk and the funny mustache? And I go, oh, Handsome Harry! So that was the last time we had seen each other before. That was on a show that Handsome Harry promoted.
Did he?
He is a really good guy.
Did he only wrestle in Los Angeles area, or was he wrestled in Mexico?
To the best of my knowledge, he was strictly an LA boy.
Okay.
Probably did some Tijuana shots. To the best of my knowledge, he didn't work Mexico or anything.
No.
Unless he did a shot here and there.
Yeah. Well, and he was when did he pass away? In April?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's May. I would say it was late April,
Yeah.
if I remember correctly. I should have really written this down.
Yeah, because I remember that's around the time everybody started, for whatever reason, there was, so many people passing away, and it's and granted, it was a lot of, indie talent and older wrestlers, guys from the past.
Well, we both knew Lester, who we know is Supreme.
Yeah.
That wasn't COVID, but that really devastated a lot of us here in SoCal. He is a really good guy.
Yeah, and Supreme, a lot of people in Mexico remembered him because he wrestled in Mexico for a lot of the deathmatch promotions down there, NGX and Monterrey, and
That's right.
And a lot of the deathmatch wrestlers knew who he was, especially when they would come to the United States or travel around wherever he was wrestling, if they were booked on the same show, because there was a lot of U.S. shows that were bringing in deathmatch wrestling. They would bring in, obviously Damien and, the later generation of guys from DTU and all that. So they really remembered him down in Mexico. And, how old was Supreme?
I believe he was 49.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something like for people, especially like me and Dan Farron, who, we were kind of winding up our regular activity in the business when he was just a rookie. But, I remember wrestling him and Joey Chaos on some of their incredibly strange wrestling shows when they were just cutting their teeth. And, then I saw them, rise in the ranks. And so I know he's 49, that's middle age, but to me at 58, he was a kid to me, and so that was really hard to see. It's funny. He was really into the deathmatch scene. I didn't quite get. That's not my bag really, but that was his thing. But when I wrestled him on that show in Simi Valley, it's like people kept telling me, "Okay, now just be prepared. He works really stiff." And I said, "No." I said, "Well, he said he'd work light with me," and they said, "Oh, no. He's very stiff." When I was in there, I didn't feel a thing. Man, he took really good care of me.
Yeah.
So he worked as stiff as he wanted, or he could work as light as he wanted.
Yeah, my favorite memory of Supreme was that one day that we went to, Wrestle Reunion. And that's where you saw, what's her name? The giant Isis, the Amazon.
Andrea,
the Amazon. Yeah, the Amazon.
What's her name? Andrea the Amazon or something?
I think her real name, or they changed it later on to Andrea something because of the Andre the Giant thing or whatever. But I think it was wasn't it like Isis the Amazon or something?
Isis the Amazon.
Yeah,
Isis
at that point.
The Amazon.
Because I remember.
How tall was she?
She was very tall, but I remember it was her and that tiny girl that's now Selena Vega in WWE. She's with Andrade.
Yes.
And I remember it was Conan came over to our area to say hi to us. And we were talking to Conan, and she walks in, and Conan's like, "Oh my God!" And then you're saying the same exact thing, but with a different tone. Conan's more
Conan was like, "Oh my God!"
Yeah,
that.
Yeah,
I think I said something like, "Oh my God, I don't know, but she can beat me into oblivion on any day."
Yeah, so then it's us. I think Dan was with us, Paul, and a few other people, and I remember. Dan went over and asked her if she could take a picture with you, and she said only it was $20 for a photo. And I remember nobody offered to pay. You didn't have the money because you had bought that.
I was scrambling, and all I could find were $1 bills in my pocket.
Yeah, because you had just bought the Destroyer book, I think. Remember, we went and bought the Destroyer stuff.
Yes, that's right.
And so everybody's trying to doesn't have money or doesn't have $20 exactly, or they're not really trying. And Supreme walks by and he's like here, and he gives you the $20 and you give it to Isis the Amazon, and you guys get your picture. And I looked at, I was so surprised Supreme was so willing to just give you give you $20 like that I paid him back at that moment. And I remember when you came back, I owe you, Supreme. He's like, "No, your buddy already paid me." And I just remember how
cool.
How cool he was.
That's the thing I got to say about Supreme is he was somebody who, I don't think I did that much for his career, but he never forgot it. He would even years later say, "Thank you for always treating us with respect when we were rookies," and I know this sounds like a cliche thing you hear in almost every Hallmark type of preview, but the last time I saw him was that time when you and I went to the Superboy tribute at the Santino Brothers show a few years back. And, he just said in his very deadpan way as we said goodbye, he just looked up and said, "I love you." And, that's the kind of guy he was. He looked like he looked like mini Bam Bam Bigelow, this badass, but he was a very sweet guy.
Yeah, I remember the other thing that I remembered about him was we were at the very first time I met him was at that what was those shows that you guys did in Pasadena? I think it was Pasadena, the Fangoria convention.
Yes.
And we're backstage, and I see Supreme, and obviously his look was very intimidating if you didn't know him. And I was like, man, this guy looks scary. And then I saw Craze, and Craze looks even scarier than Supreme. I think. I mean, to certain people, he looks even a little more wilder. And I just remember, like, I walked backstage again from you guys had just had a match. I went backstage, and Supreme and Craze are talking about their kids or like about their family, and I'm like, man, these guys are talking about like normal stuff. I mean, what's up with that? So that I always remember that.
I remember I have a very clear memory of one evening right before when we used to have incredibly strange shows in Moguls in the 90s, and there was Supreme with his wife, and there's Supreme with their infant son in his arms. And oh my God, the infant son looked so tiny with Supreme holding him in his arms.
I mean, the other thing I remember about him is, remember those City of Industry shows, the Bart shows? They had him like, I think they were working with those guys from CZW, Wife Beater and some other dude.
Was that the one where they were working?
Oh, with the guy that they cut their hand. Yeah, they cut the finger. Remember they cut that guy's finger? What's the guy that they cut his finger? I don't remember his name.
I can't remember. Was that where they were using all the fluorescent tubing?
Yeah. I think it was a show.
Wasn't Dynamite D involved in that one too?
I don't remember, but this was like before that. He was cutting a promo. He was cutting a promo, and he started cursing, and we're in the crowd, and he's just cursing nonstop, and you see like Bart like looking around like very like embarrassed because there's a bunch of kids. There's a bunch of kids in the crowd, and somebody goes to the back and tells Supreme to keep it down because he's just cursing nonstop. And I just remember that. Yeah. And then we went back there, and Supreme's like, they got mad at me because I was cursing the whole time. He's like, I didn't know there were kids, and we were just laughing. I think that was a show Superboy was wrestling also on. So yeah, some good memories with them.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, definitely wonderful memories.
Yeah, there was a couple of other people that passed away, unfortunately. I think you might remember Sangre Fria, who wrestled in the 70s, and I think he might have gone all the way through the early 80s.
Yes. In fact, before I had much awareness of the LA Lucha scene, he was frequently on shows here in the 70s. Yeah,
I mean, because that guy, he became a star under that name, right? Like, he was pretty much not a superstar, but somebody who had a name. The name was given to him by the Valente Perez, the Lucha Libre editor, the magazine editor or director.
Yes. Yeah, he's one. In fact, when I started getting the Lucha Libre magazines frequently when I was like 10 years old, I think one of those first years he was on the cover, and for some reason that one stuck out with me. I know he never got a really huge push, but that's one of the names I remember from going back to my childhood.
The worst thing about those Lucha Libre magazines, the guy on the cover usually had no story within the magazine. I mean, which really is annoying.
That's so true. That confused me when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Because I would see a cover and I'd say, oh, this dude looks really cool. Wonder who he is. I mean, they usually have his name on Help or whatever. But then you look through the magazine and, wow, is that it? Yeah, that was a strange eccentricity of Lucha Libre magazine. That was a very kitschy, almost Warhol-like artsy mag.
Yeah, but and a lot of people talk about like Apter, how like the Apter mags they would make stars. Lucha Libre magazine legitimately like made stars. The guy who was the director of that magazine created characters, Sangre Fria being one of them.
Valente Perez, wasn't it?
Yeah. He made the Sangre Fria character, and then he did the Hermanos Muerte also. That this guy would later become one.
I understand, wasn't he also the machine behind the monster?
Yeah. A lot of characters, yeah. He was...
It's amazing, yeah. No, he makes Bill Apter look like an indie promoter in comparison. Yeah, that magazine did make stars.
Yeah. Too bad the content wasn't that particularly strong.
Yeah, if you wanted good content, you go to Boxy Lucha.
Yeah.
If you want kitsch, if you want art, you go to Lucha Libre. If you want data, you go to Boxy Lucha. And
you knew Lucha Libre, like, whoever they didn't like, they would constantly rip on that person, like, be it a wrestler or promoter. They would actually, like, always, like, there was always, like, a cheap shot directed at somebody, which is very unfortunate.
Got really weird. And it got really weird in the '80s when Benjamin Mora, I believe he was
Yes.
the one behind the
Yes.
magazine. And when they were promoting in '86, '87 at the Olympic Auditorium, they were co-promoting with some American promoters, and there was a big falling out. And I can't remember the details, but the American promoters were still promoting Lucha at the Olympic Auditorium. This was shortly after the Santo Casas mask match in '87. And I don't know, I have no idea what the falling out was about, whose fault it was. But Pat Hood was looking through a Lucha Libre mag, and I see him just looking confused, like, this is weird. And I'm going, what's that? Well, they're talking about, like, the promoter in Los Angeles who betrayed us and emphasized that he's a Jew. And it's just like, whoa.
Well, I mean, yeah, you know, Lucha Libre, you know how it is with them. Like, they still talk about, like, they still were coming up with characters post World War II about, you know, El Nazi, September Negro.
El Nazi, who at one point was a babyface.
Yes. Well, you remember the Talibans later on, with Scorpio Jr. and all those guys. Yeah, Bestia Salvaje, Emilio Charles Jr. That was actually a funny group, though, to be fair. But
that was a funny group.
Done in poor taste, but a funny group.
It was done in poor taste, but I don't know if you know the punchline. Weren't they coming out in trench coats after Columbine?
Wasn't that the Dinamitas? But the Dinamitas always wore trench coat. Well, but I think it kind of became more noticeable after that too.
Yeah, the funny part is, you know, that whole thing about the trench coat mafia was a Columbine myth.
Yeah,
it was just a wild imagination of a student. There was no trench coat mafia.
They just want to make the story a little bit crazier. Someone else who passed away was a wrestler who was known as Mohawk during the 70s and 80s. He actually wrestled for the Super Libres of Pabellon Azteca, so he was actually a pretty known name, teamed up with the Mohicanos, which is pretty much what...
Yeah, he's one I'm actually pretty unfamiliar with. I mean, I had known of him, but I know almost nothing about him.
Yeah, then he became the original Bandito back in the late 80s. Interesting, he was actually one of the early... He was kind of one of those veterans that they brought into AAA to work with the younger guys, and one of the guys he got to work with was Rey Mysterio Jr., and he actually lost his mask to Rey Mysterio Jr., one of the first mask matches.
That's cool.
Yeah, so he actually had a pretty good career. I mean, the fact that he was part of the Super Libres alone kind of makes it somebody you want to look up more on, just because that group was very interesting.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Another wrestler that passed away on May 15th, Discovery. I don't know if you did you ever watch Discovery? He was in AAA.
I've never seen Discovery.
He wrestled in AAA as part of the Cadetes del Espacio and the Power Raiders between 1994 and 1995. And then I think probably in the early 2000s, he ended up going to Chicago, and he became obviously to continue wrestling. He did Lucha Libre. I think he would go back and forth to Mexico, to Chicago. There's a lot of guys who do that a lot. Like, you'll hear like a luchador will like disappear, and you find out later on that he was living in Minnesota, and you ask yourself, why Minnesota? And it's like, because there's a lot of, like, I guess they get construction work, or an opportunity or some type of work that they could get, and they also wrestle in those areas. And Chicago's one of those places like that where you hear, like, I think, like, we Dr. Cerebro, remember we talked to him a couple of years ago, he was doing that also for a couple of years. Well, Discovery did that, but he actually ended up staying in Chicago and became a trainer in that area for some of the promotions there, like Galley, and he actually helped train Kalisto, who's in WWE, and even like a lot of the local guys. I'm trying to remember who else. Remember Zema Ion? He helped train him.
Yeah.
He didn't. He trained him like afterwards, but he trained him in Lucha Libre. So he was around for a while. He was actually pretty good too. Like that whole group of Cadetes del Espacio and Power Raiders. The high flying, guys who come in for AAA. don't get a lot of, people like to knock them because they're high flying, and they start questioning whether or not they're good wrestlers, but they end up being really good. And actually, Discovery actually wrestled in the Toreo time. He was in the late 80s, early 90s Toreo as Gamma.
Yeah,
so
I was totally embarrassed to because I saw the announcement of Discovery on, I believe it was Cauliflower Alley's website, and I just sat there saying, I should know who this guy is, and I don't.
Yeah, there's so many. There's a lot of guys like that were. That's one of the unfortunate things, like because there's there's so many wrestlers and so many luchadors that you kind of like lose track of who unless they're like a big star or big name. It's kind of hard to keep track of everyone, or if they're not actually involved. Yeah, they're not being interviewed.
And also, a lot of these guys, especially ones who moved to, say, Chicago or Minnesota, I think it's cool that kind of in the spirit of guys like El Moro and Gil Arellano here in Los Angeles, they said, hey, let's get some wrestling going. Let's start a little league here. And in the case here in LA, it turned into a community that's been going for 50 years plus now.
Yeah, I think there's somebody in the Northwest that also did that moved from Mexico to that area, and he started training. He didn't start the promotion, but he was training. And then like Texas obviously is another place where you get a lot of that, because guys obviously
and in the Northwest there's I from what I understand, there's been a huge Latino migration up there. There's a lot of work up there, and so I think it's cool that they're getting some lucha up there too. Getting the community going. That's awesome.
Yeah, hopefully there's some wrestling at some point, because this is the part where talking about people passing away is like very depressing.
Oh, it is. Yeah. It is, and I'm a people person, and what right now I'm missing more than anything is I miss us being able to go to that little arena on Lawrence Avenue in LA and just hanging out with our compadres and just kind of just watching some good back alley lucha libre
and sitting for 45 minutes listening to some Mexican guy who might be a famous singer that we don't know during intermission. We have no idea if this guy could be famous. He could be just some dude walking in. He could have fooled everybody into thinking he's some famous Mexican singer, and nobody knows. They give him a mic. He's there singing for 45 minutes during intermission, and we don't know.
That was such a surreal experience. And then there was that spirit lady dressed like a fawn or something like that.
Yeah, what was that?
That was a great night.
That was the last Lucha show we went to. That sucks.
It is. Yeah. And it's probably going to be the last one we go to for a while.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking. I keep seeing people. I keep seeing people trying to be positive about this stuff. It's like, I don't know. I don't think we're going to be going anywhere. Like, unless there's like wrestling for like 10 people and we could actually go to that. I'm not sure there's going to be anything open for a while.
Exactly. I think we're going to have to wait till the coast is clear. And, it's there's still so much we don't know about this virus that we're going to be having to take precautions for a while. It could be 5 months. It could be 10 months. I don't know, but it's important that not only do we keep ourselves safe, but our families and our friends safe too.
Yeah, and that's also why they're not running shows. I mean, you can't really do that without risking people attending. It's not just us; it's everybody that goes to these shows.
Exactly, and I mean, there's the last couple of weeks, people started gathering on all the beaches of Orange County, and a few weeks later now, the Orange County virus cases have spiked. They've gone up, like, not just a little, significantly, and so yeah, I miss being in crowds. I miss being at Lucha shows. I'm missing all my other friends too. But we got to do what we got to do. This is a good time if you want to start writing. If you want to start corresponding with your friends and calling friends on the phone, man, this is the best time to do so. Make that connection.
Just don't do what Alberto Patron did during this pandemic.
Okay, let me ask this: do you think there's a possibility that he'll be on the next season of Dark Side of the Ring?
I
mean, he was in WWF long enough.
Yeah.
He could probably make the appearance.
Have you watched some of the episodes? Have you watched most of them, all of them, or none?
I watched. Okay, let me think of the ones I watched. I watched the one on Gino Hernandez. That
Yes.
was the one that fascinated me most of all of them. And actually, I think that's the one I probably enjoyed the most.
Yeah.
The Road Warriors one, it was interesting, but it didn't, compared to the other episodes, I didn't watch the Montreal one just because I've heard that story a jillion times. And I did watch the Owen Hart one last night. Oh, and I definitely watched the Herb Abrams.
Yeah, the Herb Abrams one was wild, but you,
Oh, that's one where you want to get a big Coke and a big tub of popcorn and just sit back and watch that one.
yeah, because I was trying to think. I was trying to think if the Road Warriors one actually like would qualify. Because I mean, I understand that obviously Hawk passing away, so I guess that would qualify for that. But it's like the rest of it was like they didn't really. It wasn't. They really didn't go through a lot of rough patches in their. It wasn't. It wasn't as dark.
It wasn't that different. It wasn't that different from other wrestlers who go through bouts of, dealing with drugs, alcohol, or dysfunctional families, whatever. It didn't stand out compared to the others. I mean, the Herb Abrams, that's a unique story. That's like Jack Stephron on vitamins.
So, do you think the Alberto story fits into this? The whatever their what their criteria is to have it? Because yeah, I think he probably
just think of it. This is a guy who got into a pretty brutal fist fight with his own brother.
Yes. in Germany too.
This is the guy who, when you read about all the dysfunction, was it Paige he was with?
Yes.
The woman he was.
Yeah. Well, the one before.
Read about that.
Well, I mean, you just think of
before this one.
Yeah, it was the one before this, but it's like it's if you really, I mean, I kept thinking, would he qualify for a Dark Side of the Ring? And it's like, well, ever since 2014 when he left, the way he left WWE, where it was like I think he slapped the guy, didn't he? The guy who said the racist remark.
Oh, who made a joke about inferring that he was like the bus boy or something.
He slapped him, right?
And then he slapped the guy.
Yeah. Yeah, so there, that right there is probably enough for like the first 15 minutes of the show. So I would guess he probably does qualify because the whole Page thing was really weird. And then he beat up that Ninja Turtle in Mexico.
Oh yes.
So there's more, and then like his whole career afterwards, all the stuff that he's done, like the blunders he's had.
And that disastrous match with Tito Ortiz. I mean,
yeah.
I know that's a drop in the ocean compared to the way he's treating women, but just to show how far his career fell to, have this sham of a match and just get his lunch fed to him by one of the most, I don't want to use the term washed up, but Tito Ortiz would get his lunch fed to him by any, contemporary fighter.
Plus, and then remember that story from like when he was in CMLL, when that story came out that one of Mystico's friends pulled a gun out on him.
Yes, about that.
I mean, we don't know if I don't know if that's the only problem. Like if you ask like the luchadors, they're never gonna want to say like anything because they still very much kayfabe. It's like they don't even like to say who's their worst opponent. I mean, everybody's good. So it's like
they're gentlemanly about it.
Yeah, so it's like you would have to find somebody who would be willing to like spill the beans on that. But I think he probably does qualify. Then all the Impact, the falling out with Impact, how that came about. There's a lot of bad stories. So I guess he would qualify. And this most recent story is so bad.
In fact, you know what, Fredo? I think he would qualify for a 2-part episode.
Yes. Well, it's just amazing. This guy, like, if you go back 6 years ago, this guy would have been in demand right now. Like, if we were talking about like AEW and all that, and look at now, nobody wants him. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants him. Like, other than AAA always having an open mind to bringing him back, nobody else wants to bring him in. It's like it's crazy how somebody who was a former WWE star can fall off the rails that badly. It's amazing.
And it sounds,
Yes, and it sounds like somebody who initially was mapping out his career intelligently and then just lost his mind.
Yeah, yeah. I think he does qualify just because his story qualifies just because it's ongoing. Like, it's not just one incident. It's like there's still more going on that is actually just
this probably is not the final chapter.
Yeah. Hopefully he cleans, like he gets himself straight, because this is really kind of like, you can't be every year it's like there's an Alberto story and it's not good.
Oh yeah, and well, in this one, I don't know how it's going to play out in the courts, but this is one where he could do some significant time, and if he's guilty of what he's saying, or what they're accusing him of, deservedly so.
Yeah. So speaking of other stories that have happened in Lucha Libre, I guess we could call this the dark side of Lucha. Just some stories that from over the past, however long CMLL claims Lucha Libre has existed, 80 plus years. Do you have a specific story that you think would actually qualify for this show, that you would actually like see them kind of like, look back to and, introduce to the fans? Because honestly, all these stories would be introduced to a new audience, because I don't think anybody really knows a lot of Lucha Libre.
No, that's true. I think there would be appeal to it.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of good stories to tell, and I don't mean in just a salacious National Enquirer type of way. This is part of the business, and I think, I think, how do I say this? I remember growing up when I was a kid. It was, you don't say anything bad about wrestling. You don't see anything bad about the wrestlers. Kayfabe or Rue. You paint us as these big teddy bears and Boy Scouts, and of course Boy Scouts isn't probably the most clean image anymore either. But it's a part of the business, and I think the only way that you could really tell the story about wrestling is to show the wondrous things about it, the good things, but you really have to show the dark side about it, warts and all, because it is a part of the real history of the business. And I know back in the days of kayfabe, they said, no, you don't talk about this stuff ever. Well, then all you're going to get is a fictionalized version of pro wrestling history. And in order for the fascinating history of pro wrestling to truly be told, kayfabe had to die first. You have to tell the real story, and you have to tell the uncomfortable stories.
Or you get the history version from Vince McMahon, where there's nothing bad that happens. It's all positive.
Andre the Giant gave back to the business, unlike Bret Hart.
Do you think they would have to do like just stories that are more recent? Because I don't know if they would be like, I can't imagine people like tuning in to something that happened like in the even like in the 80s or even beyond that, because it's Lucha Libre.
Yeah, I would love if there was somebody, if I was going to talk about a wrestler whose career was involved in great heights, but also great scandal, and eventually led to a violent death in a bar, it would be Luis. Okay, I might be forgetting his actual name. I want to say Luis Hernandez, but I might be wrong. But he was the original El Gladiador in Mexico in the 1950s. This guy was this guy was box office potential. But he was kind of like a Dr. Jerry Graham in that he went into bars and got into lots of fights. And his story, I think, would be a really, really fascinating story. But I think you would have to have a really clever TV producer or director, somebody who makes a documentaries, to get the average American fan interested in something from another era and from another country. I think it could be done, but I don't think I could do it.
See, that's the problem. You'd be the only one that could do it. Who else are they going to interview?
Yeah, because I'd be impressed if somebody. Yeah, I would be impressed if somebody could do a Dark Side of the Ring, where, like you're saying, they took some characters from the 60s or 70s, some wrestlers.
Yeah.
And somehow were able to make it to where people wanted to tune in. I mean, how do you hook people into something that was that far in the past? I think a lot of the people, even historically minded wrestling fans, are kind of more in tune to what happened going back to the emergence of the national WWF in the 1980s.
Yeah, because I mean, if you're watching like the show right now, it's like it's basically all 80s forward that they've done stories on, and a lot of it is a lot of guys who were in WWE at some point, so they kind of have the WWE talking point added to it. So people are like, oh yeah, I remember him in WWF or WWE. It's not a lot of like, there's not a. I don't think they've done too many that have been from guys who haven't been in.
Yeah.
So I mean, and so it's going to be a lot of hard. Plus, you're not going to find a lot of guys who interview, because every single one of these shows has some expert, like Jim Cornette, some wrestler that knew that guy, some historian that knew him. I mean, honestly, in Lucha Libre, I don't know if you're going to find a lot of guys who know a lot about anybody from the like pre-85 or pre-1990.
No, they'd be having to reach out to guys like you and Cubs fan and those type of people, and
neither one of us would want to be on TV.
I know exactly. Maybe they could locate Steve Sims.
We'd be the first people on the show that are like they show our silhouette and change our voice just so people don't see us. People would be like, man, these guys must be very like criminals or something but they know history.
We will refer to this man here as Mr. X, although his real name is Fredo Esparza. He lives in Pomona, California, at Walnut Hills. You
know who I think is the one person that they could probably do it on that would actually like work? Would be Art Barr, Love Machine.
Oh, that would be a good one. I bet you they could pull that off.
Because not only do you have the AAA run, but you have a lot of stuff that happened before that with Portland, and then his WCW story, which how it ended because of that whole issue in Portland, and then you have a lot of wrestlers who knew him, like Conan, and the guys.
Guerrero.
Well, no, the ones that are alive right now that are like, you basically have. Well, honestly, you have Conan.
Yeah, but I was saying, if you're doing this thing on Art Barr, I bet you one of the things that you could hook people in is if very early in the show you emphasize that he was like the right-hand man of Eddie Guerrero.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'd be curious if Vicky actually knew Art Barr too. So that's something else that would actually. And Chavo also, he's still around.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Some of the dark side shows, I wonder if the same person is doing all the episodes, because I thought the Gino Hernandez one overall was done pretty well, and was neat to see his mother chime in on stuff. I never heard that side of the story.
Yeah.
But then the Herb Abrams one, it was kind of a fun roller coaster ride, but there's a lot of goofy shit. One, they didn't really say anything about the police report of actually how he died, and then they did that stupid ass thing toward the end where one of his buddies says, I think he's still alive. Oh man, no, it's cool if Jim Morrison is still alive. If he's still alive, that's bitchin'. Herb Abrams, who gives a rat's ass?
Yeah, with Art Barr, I just think there's so much in the sudden death that he had. You said his son passed away, didn't he?
That's a sad story.
Yeah.
His son Dexter was, I guess, horseback riding when he was 14, and I don't know if he just fell or if he hit a branch of a tree, but he was killed instantly, apparently.
I was just curious to see, because I think that's the one person that goes beyond Lucha Libre. He was in WCW and all that stuff, so there's enough of him where that would be and he was a guy who was going to become a star. A second chance in the United States was in the horizon too.
I know that he read The Observer and knew Dave Meltzer, and
there's
a sad irony that he didn't live long enough to see that he was heel of the year, tag team of the year, match of the year, all in 1994. Am I remembering correctly? 1994, yeah. But that was pretty incredible to be this guy who, even though he had quite a following to 1 year suddenly just bam, like he probably could have swept more of those awards that year.
Yeah. The other,
It was impressive.
I think the other stories they could look into are all the in-ring deaths in Lucha Libre. The most recent ones being Silver King and Paraguayo Jr., but you also have Oro and Sangre India. I mean, those, I think all four of them are
very good.
I think all four of those you could add some, you could get, well, especially the last two, you have a lot of guys who are around with Aguayo and Silver King, and then Oro, there's still a lot of guys who were actually even in the match that can talk about that. But that's
true.
Those are a couple of other some stories that they could do, just because, and they were all guys who were like, well, Sangre India and Oro were guys who were kind of like moving up, whereas Aguayo Jr. and Silver King were.
Yeah, both of them. I mean, Oro looked like he was headed for really good things. Sangre India, I mean, I think he was like rookie of the year.
Yeah.
Previous year, he got his first Apuestas match against, I think it was Chamaco Valaguez.
Wow.
And I think just like maybe a week or two later is when he passed away in the ring, and just a freak thing from what I understand. Just took a backwards bump, over the ropes. I mean, something a lot of guys have done 100 times and just hit wrong. And I remember I think he broke his spine and died of shock.
Yeah, there was a one of the magazines I went through. There was somebody who it was the anniversary of his passing, and they gave they had a reporter that was there, and he wrote down his memory of what happened that day during that match, and he just wrote everything like he just told the entire story of what his experience was.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, it was really good. I think it's in one of the magazines. I did translate it, I think.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
If you ever find it, I'd love to see.
Yeah, and then with Oro, obviously there, and even with Sangre India, there's a lot of wrestlers that were still during that time period that are still kind of active, and a few that are retired. You still have Tony Salazar and all those guys around, Nero Casas. I'm sure they all know the story. Yeah. So there's still a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, I remember when I first knew Conan, that was in the 80s, so he knew a lot of guys who were, actually on the show that night.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember asking about it, and he says, and the way he put it is, the guys will bring it up, but then they'll talk about it for about 10 seconds, and then they just look really sad and don't want to talk about it anymore. Apparently, that was really traumatic for a lot of the boys.
Yeah. Well, there's still so many, I think Oro also, I think Felino's the one that said he can't talk about it. I think Felino was in that match, wasn't he?
Oh, no, actually, Felino, that was when they were doing that really hot Ciclone Ramirez feud, and they were supposed to have a mask versus mask that night. And they did the match, but they went to a no contest.
Yeah, because the whole Oro thing had just happened.
Yeah, and you could tell, even though their moves were solid, you could tell they were phoning in that match. And let's just get through the evening, let's get out of here.
Yeah, because I think they asked Felino about him, and he still can't talk about it. He's still I can imagine, even though it was no fault of Chaos. Chaos was the last guy who was wrestling with Oro in the ring, and that must be rough on him. Yeah, I can't imagine that. I mean, and then there's a couple of other, obviously Abismo Negro's death. That's one of those mysteries that, what did he do? Step out of a bus, and next thing you know, he disappeared, and they found him dead afterwards or something.
Yeah. And if that wasn't something odd where he demanded that they pull the bus over.
Yeah, it was but there was never no story about it. He just passed away, and they moved on, and it's that's something that
it sounded like one that there could have been room for an investigation, but there wasn't.
I think it was just because he had so many issues leading up to that they kind of were it was going to catch up to him at some point. And
yeah, this is true.
The guy was that guy was a huge star, and he probably would have been a far bigger star than he ever was, but he just had the demons.
If he didn't have his issues, he would have been huge.
Yeah.
I remember, I don't remember what the podcast was called, but it was a podcast where they look into unusual scandals from unusual walks of life, and they actually did. We're going to look into the wacky world of Lucha Libre, and one of the strangest stories is of Abismo Negro.
Wow.
And I was looking forward to it, but man, you know how sometimes people who don't know a lot about pro wrestling do their best to try to understand it, and
Yeah.
they do what they can. These guys have no clue about pro wrestling, and were just so cocky about their analysis of the Bisno Negro's death. And there was some theory that his drug use was maybe because he was truly a great amateur wrestler, and he felt so silly that he had to put on funny costumes to make money.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, God. I was so tempted to find one of their phone numbers and just tell them what assholes they are, but
They must have not seen him wrestle as winners.
yeah.
No, I mean, I think...
I was half expecting him to say, well, his brother Winners said, this is a terrible tragedy,
Yeah.
and I miss my brother. Abysmo Winners all the time.
But see, I think the hard thing with Abysmo Negro is that you're not going to get anybody telling the truth. Because, I mean, his whole drug issue, I mean, they'll talk about that, but they won't talk about the other stuff. So it's like, they're not going to talk about the other, the dirtier, the uglier side of it, the darker side of it. I don't think you're going to have like his family talk about it. Certain wrestlers aren't going to want to talk about it. And there's a lot of wrestlers that knew him that were around him, and I don't think they would talk about it. The other thing...
Yeah, I remember that night. I remember that night when I was on the Sports Arena show with Superboy and Capitan, and I remember he came into the dressing room. It was when he was still under the mask as Winners.
Yeah.
That was the first time I saw his face. I thought, damn, he's a handsome guy. Why does he wear a mask? But he came in there and was super nice to everybody. My first thought was, oh, how nice, because I don't think they did this in the other AAA towns, but they kept the local boys' dressing rooms separate from the big timers, which I thought was kind of fucked up. But anyway, Winners came in, and I thought, oh, how nice. He's actually coming in to say hey to everybody. And then Superboy recently told me, no, he wasn't coming in to say hi. Some smart ass said that I was holding and that he could get drugs from me. That's why he came in all smiles.
Oh, jeez.
Like, hey, buddy. We know Superboy. He's not the guy who's going to be holding a Kia Coke.
Yeah, but see, that's what I mean. You're not gonna find people like talking about that stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. Another story that I think would make a really interesting episode of Dark Side of Lucha would be Charlie Manson. Remember him in prison?
Oh, that's a great one. Oh my God, if they could, especially if you could get the cops he beat up to talk on.
Yes, one of them was paralyzed. It's like,
was he really?
I think so. I
didn't know
yeah.
that.
I mean, there's a lot. I mean, first of all, the whole character, just leading up to it, telling you about the character, basically it's a combination of Charles Manson and Marilyn Manson turned into a professional wrestler. And it's Charlie Manson, who actually isn't a bad guy. He's actually a really like a very, very easy to get along with type of guy. Although this time he just, and he's told the story a few times of what happened in that incident. So I think they could probably he's the one guy I think you could probably get to talk about that, and he'll be honest about it. I don't know if he'll like really talk about what happened to the police officers he beat up, but I mean, you could always bring whoever has that report. They could talk about it.
Kind of like a Mr. Niebla, where he would be pretty open about it.
Yeah, but so you have that, and then you also have that one accident he had while wrestling in AAA when he fell. Remember when he fell off the ladder?
I heard about that.
Yeah, that was horrible. I mean, that's what these promotions. This is what these shows want. These shows want they want some outrageous stuff. You could show that, and then you go to that because you're going to show about his career. You're going to want to show that.
Definitely. Yeah. I've never seen that footage. I've never wanted to look for it. I heard it was just
that's really bad.
Looking.
It's really bad. But yeah, he did Prince.
I still get nauseous if I see either Sid Vicious or was it Gronda?
Yes.
When their legs just
when their legs just snap. Oh. Yeah. Well, Charlie's wasn't like he didn't snap. He just fell. So it looked brutal, but it looked very painful. But I think he's probably the one out of everyone that you could get to talk about their story, he's probably the one that's going to be the most open about it. Another story I thought about, and Kurt, this is one that happened recently. Remember the Alvarado family destroying Ultimo Guerrero's car.
I was hoping that we would have a good way to segue into that, because I don't know if it's an anniversary or if somebody's gotten into more trouble, but I've been casually cruising online this morning as I was just kind of, shaking the cobwebs from my head. A lot of people are bringing up that incident.
Yeah.
Is there a reason it's being brought up again?
It's the 3-year anniversary of them getting fired. It was on May 20th. It was yesterday.
That is one of the strangest.
Well, I should mention the people who got fired were Maximo, La Mascara, and Bobby Zavala, who somehow just got thrown in there. Nobody actually knows what his part was in this, other than him being a little bit of a sleazy guy. That's pretty much all that we know about. But La Mascara and Maximo were caught on tape, as they say, because there was video of them actually wrecking Ultimo Guerrero's car, which, actually, interestingly enough, is that you could probably get a lot out of this, because the lead up to that was basically all the whole union issues that they were having with the passing of Brazo de Oro. So you definitely have a lot more to it besides just a bunch of, a family of rustlers destroying a car of another fellow rustler.
And it's really, and the whole thing, like, who knows what went on in that meeting after Brazo de Oro's passing.
Yeah.
But hard feelings fly hard in pro wrestling. I'm sure some of those meetings can get nasty. But that's like the pinnacle of unprofessionalism, to go trash Ultimo Guerrero's car, especially when a lot of these guys probably had jobs in CMLL for as long as they wanted.
Yes.
And then
we would have been... Yeah. For those who aren't familiar with the whole story, it basically consisted of who was it? The entire Alvarado family. Well, not all of them made it on video, but you basically had La Mascara, Maximo, Brazo de Platino, I think, was there, and Psycho Clown. Psycho Clown was not wearing his clown mask; he was actually just wearing a hoodie, and that covered up his head. I think he was wearing a hoodie and maybe some sunglasses, just so you wouldn't see.
I theorize would have gotten away with it.
He was the one that was going to get away with it, basically.
Yeah. See, he should get away. I think he should get away with it. They would have not known it was him if he just dressed up as Pepino the Clown from Titanic.
Well, they knew who it was.
Everybody would say, "Hey, that's Pepino from Argentina. That's not Psycho Clown."
But they knew just because of the size and stuff, which was obvious. But I think other than maybe getting into trouble legally, he was the one that had and obviously Brazo Platino, and there was a couple of people involved in it, other Brazo Alvarado family members that weren't part of CMLL, so they weren't going to get in trouble. But I mean, the fact that La Mascara and Maximo were working for CMLL, and these were two guys that had jobs for life in CMLL, they were willing to risk that. Not only did they get fired, they pretty much lost. They've done very little since then. I mean, they both landed on AAA. La Mascara ended up leaving AAA because he really wasn't getting a push. Maximo I think he's still kind of there, although right now with the whole pandemic, who knows? They really were guys who had they fit exactly what CML wanted, just guys who were just there to for whatever their character was. And they did not fit outside of CMLL. They weren't guys that fit, the independents, AAA. Obviously Maximo being an Exotico, he fit there as that, but that's basically in AAA, that's a spot that's pretty much slotted into like a mid-card role, whereas Maximo and CMLL was a main eventer. So,
Yeah, I dug Maximo, but when they gave him that huge push, and I liked that push, and I thought he really put his working boots on during that push, but I don't see any other place willing to give him that push than CMLL. So, man, he had a nice, snug, secure spot. He had a job. He had a good job. And there you go.
Yeah.
Moskera, on the other hand,
Was an idiot.
I know he was an idiot because he was invisible in the first place.
Yes.
And, you know,
He had a job for life.
What I understand, he's invisible elsewhere.
Yes. He's done nothing since leaving, and it's like he doesn't even get, like, people don't even really book him. They don't really, like, before the pandemic. I mean, he wasn't anywhere. I mean, he did the whole Nación Lucha Libre with Alberto's the group that Alberto Patron started, but it's like that wasn't anything, and you know, after that he didn't do anything beyond that. He hasn't. I mean, he's probably just the one thing he's probably happy about is that Rush became an independent wrestler, because that now gives him at least that, you know, he gets to be the third guy in the Ingobernables on the independent scene, not in AAA.
It's funny. Somebody like Angel de Oro loses his mask, and it's the best thing that could have ever happened to him, because I never disliked Angel de Oro, but he was just, you know, he was kind of wallpaper in a sea of really charismatic people. Then he lost his mask, and his face just loses charisma. But then La Máscara loses his mask, and kind of looks like he does with his mask.
I just remember when he lost the mask, how everybody like pointed out how he didn't even like have a reaction. It was like, oh, I guess I lost here. Here's my mask, and he's like, that's just the kind of guy I am. And it's like, wow, that's wonderful.
That's idiotic.
Yeah.
Why have a main event? You put two masks on the line. Is it going to draw? People don't give a rat's ass if I lose my mask. No, it's a bet. It's supposed to be. It's your persona. You should be crestfallen.
Yeah.
Same when somebody loses their hair. Act like you're disappointed at the very least.
Yeah.
You know, cry in front of a mirror. Anything. Just if you get your head shaved and says, "Oh well, I'm bald now," you know, just like, Christ.
I think the only thing going against this, like being something that they could do as an episode, would be obviously Ultimo Guerrero probably would never talk about this, and neither would the Alvarado family. So I think it'd be kind of hard just to like, none of them would want to talk about it.
Another 10 years.
Yeah, maybe in 10 years they might actually open up about it.
That would be interesting.
Yeah,
that would be very interesting.
Another story that I think you could do like a 20. Well, maybe you could put them both together, although you could probably do them separately. That 20 days in 1986, April 1986. Within 20 days, we lost El Solitario, and then there was a car accident that we lost Angel Blanco. Yeah, I mean, you could have two stories.
Especially, and Dr. Wagner being personally injured, and that the three of them weren't they like inseparable?
Yeah, La Ola Blanca.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
in fact, I don't know if this is a myth or not, but I've heard like right before the car wreck that Blanco and Wagner were like talking about Solitario and just talking about how much it's hitting them, and then the car wreck happened. I don't know if that's just somebody waxing poetic or not, but
I mean, you could do 2 episodes on each like an episode on each, just because Solitario was a huge star. I mean, I don't think people realize how big a star he was, and there's a lot of question marks concerning his passing, because there's a lot of people who don't really know.
There's a lot of mystery behind that, and a lot of speculation.
Yeah,
that would make a great episode.
Because I think the what they've said, it's kind of like what happened with David Von Erich, the passing of David Von Erich, where they kind of said it was like an intestinal or stomach issue that he had or something.
That's right. They said it was something like enteritis.
Yeah.
And then I heard the total opposite end, where, oh God, it's embarrassing the way wrestlers used to think back then. I remember getting a call from somebody. Did you hear how David Von Erich died? And I go, oh yeah, he was found in this hotel room. And go, no, didn't you hear? He was in a match in Japan, and he was so coked up that his heart exploded out of his chest.
Oh, jeez.
And the person believed it, too.
Oh, God.
And if you looked at the person, you wouldn't think this is a dumbass, but the person believed it.
Yeah.
But it sounds like, if you're going to guess, it sounds like it could have been accidental overdose, it could have been suicide, it could have been mixing alcohol and pills. I don't know, but you know, I that was the first wrestling death where I remember just being like, where I remember hearing about it the day it happened, because you remember growing up, we didn't get news about a wrestler dying until usually 3 months afterwards at the aftermath. So I was totally like tripped out when I heard, oh, David Von Erich died last night. And, you know, that was a shocker. And I was watching the CCW tapes like religiously at the time. You know, that 1983 year was amazing wrestling.
Yeah. Well, the car accident also, I mean, there was other, Jungla Negra, Solar, and Mano Negra were in that car accident. They're still around to, like, they could also talk about it. That's the one
true,
thing.
Yeah.
And apparently those guys went, I know Solar said he had a rough period afterwards, that he spent like several months where he couldn't sleep because he just kept thinking, he kept remembering about he had some sort of, mental breakdown because of it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I heard that's common when people there's probably survivor skills.
Yeah.
Like, why did they survive? Why did I survive and they didn't? You know, that's very common and understandable too.
Yeah, and huge stars in that car accident too. So that's I don't know.
I think we have a LuchaWorld side of the ring coming up, episode after episode.
Of what? We're talking about tragedies.
Oh yeah, all these different people from Gladiador to
Angel Blanco,
Dr. Wagner, and Angel Blanco. They're there, yeah.
Huge star. I mean, they're huge stars. And you have a lot of people who can talk about those guys. Even like with Solitario, there's still a lot of people around that can talk about it. I think though, like I said, the trouble is like trying to get people to understand how big a star they are, coming from a credible source that people might believe. That might be you'd probably have to get like Conan on there, and I don't know if people are gonna
Conan
like.
Conan can talk about that.
Yeah.
Conan was actually a really huge fan of Solitario, because I thought Solitario, because he had come into LA every now and then, and I could tell he was really cool and charismatic. But when I first knew Conan, he actually emphasized it. He says, "No, Kurt, you don't understand. This is like a Mexican Roddy Piper, somebody who just." The room all turns to him when he enters it. Like, this guy was just so dynamic.
Huge.
He was a good wrestler too, but even if he wasn't a good wrestler, he would have been over.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously, like with the car accident, that changed so much of what happened in wrestling in the following years with Dr. Wagner's career ending and Angel Blanco passing away. Although they were kind of towards their tail end of their careers, but still, you still see so many guys who stick around for a couple of years just to like help.
Yeah, it was an end of an era. It was a really sad end of an era, because all their deaths were really the 2 deaths and the permanent injury of Dr. Wagner. I mean, that was very sad. It wasn't just like a passing of the torch where their careers were winding up.
And the other thing,
were like one of the most iconic trios. Years before they started feuding with each other. Yeah, especially
in Lucha Libre, where these guys are like, fans kind of hold on to their stars for a very long time. Like they, a guy could be like 70 years old and they're still like, this guy can still go. We need him back in CMLL, like with Rayo de Jalisco and all these guys. Yes. It's like, so these guys would have been around a lot longer if this didn't happen. Another story that I actually like told you about off air, and because I was trying to remember, and this is actually, I was telling you that I think this one might be the one that they would actually want the most. It's the story of Juana Barraza, who wrestled as La Dama de Silencio, but she is better known amongst the news as La Mata Viejitas, the old lady killer. She actually killed between 24 to 49 women, ranging between the age of 60 or older, and she actually became what you said, a serial killer. So
yeah, in fact, I don't know if I'm remembering this correctly, but I think I remember she's probably the most prolific serial killer in Mexican history.
Gee, see, look at that.
Yeah, I think she has the highest body count as far as serial killers go in Mexico.
I mean, if you want to top something on the dark side of the ring, here you go. Juana Barraza.
There you go. That's one I bet you. Okay, that's one I bet you would have good odds if they wanted to do a Dark Side of the Ring on Viceland today. I bet you they could pull that one off.
She's still.
All you have to do is say she was a masked lady wrestler and she killed more people than anybody else.
I think that would be the one they would, and then they would probably want to ask us to be on the show, and we'd be like, no. Well, you would say yes.
I would say yes. Well. I have a request. I always jokingly refer to you as a freewheeling Franklin freak. So what I want you to do is during this COVID time, since we're not going to barbers, I want you to grow a big handlebar mustache like Franklin Freak. I want you to get a big leather cowboy hat, and I want you to appear there under the name Alfredo Esparza, but I want you to talk like you're one of the fabulous furry freak brothers, and I'll grow a beard and I'll be Phineas Freak. Yeah. This is gold. Trust me, this will be gold. And if they're not going to do it, we have to.
I think there's so much that they get out of this just because she went to prison. She actually did. They were able to catch her. She went to prison, and she got married in prison too, which is
what?
Yeah, she got married. Well, you know how it is. Guys fall in love with women that go to prison for what. This is something that
and vice versa.
Yeah.
Especially here in the States.
I had no idea.
Women falling in love with killers all the time.
Yeah, and guess what? She got a divorce like within a year, and she started looking for another husband. And I was like, "Holy crap!"
Oh my God.
She's just like they were talking to one of there's this news report, and they were talking to this one woman that works within the jail, and she's like, yeah, she walks around. She's got a couple of girls walking around with her, that I guess they're her her bodyguards or whatever.
Girls?
Yeah, her girls, whatever their entourage, and it's like she looks fine. She doesn't look very remorseful or anything. She did say she did feel bad about it, and I hope Scott forgives her. But it's like I don't think she probably doesn't care that much.
Okay, just as you said that, if you ever have an address for her in prison,
you want to write to her?
I want to write her a long letter from God saying, no, you're not going to be forgiven. And every time you feel an irritation or a boil or even a little laceration, that's me punishing you, and it's just going to get worse. That's what I say to her.
Honestly, I think the fact that this is a story that became was so public, I think this is probably the one that they could. It's Vice. I mean, they've done a very good job of doing. They don't just do the wrestling documentaries. They've done other documentaries besides that. They should be able to get this. I mean, this would actually be something that I would think would fit perfectly on their this series of Dark Side of the Ring. And the final one that I remember is the Espectrito and La Barquita murders. They were murdered in a hotel room by two women, and that was actually one of those. I think that became like a big story for a while, which it
was a huge story.
Yeah.
In fact, there was some talk. I don't know if it's coming to fruition or not, but there was some talk of somebody trying to work that into a screenplay.
Wow. I mean,
that does kind of make sense. It could be done in a very strange David Lynch way, or it can be done actually in a very straightforward, almost docudrama way. That's one that I think they could pull off if they wanted to. I
think the last two are really like the two stories. I think that would really fit that that whole thing. Although you don't have the name value of the other. It doesn't have wrestlers that were name valued that to even like the fans. But still, the stories are so wild that
one of the wildest ones to me, and we covered this on an older edition of LuchaWorld, is Pancho Valentino, the priest killer.
Ah, yes.
He wasn't a huge star, but he was enough where he dropped his hair to Cavernario Galindo at one point. He wrestled here in the States, too. He was actually an American.
Wow.
But, Pancho Valentino, it's the only time I heard of a wrestler getting his nickname having nothing to do with wrestling. In fact, he never wrestled once he got the nickname. He is called the Priest Killer because he and some guys tried to rob a priest and killed the priest in the process. And he went to prison, he found God, and they were eventually going to let him out, and he was going to preach the gospel, and it's kind of funny, actually. Right before he got out, he he had a seizure and just got asphyxiated on his own vomit. So, you know,
Jeez.
sometimes there's humorous endings to stories like that.
So of all these stories, you think none of them will make it onto Dark Side of the Ring, right?
Not a one. Although the one about the woman serial killer, I think that one, if they tried, they could really pull that off.
Yeah.
I think that would be a ratings blockbuster.
And
It won't outdo the Owen Hart one, but,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I kind of think, like, just because they're going to run out of stuff, and, I mean, there's been a lot of death in wrestling, but not everyone's died in a way where you're going to tell a whole story about, you know, it's not going to be like
I know
I mean, the Road Warriors one was a stretch.
Yeah, the Road Warriors is one where, if they're not careful, every episode is going to look the same.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I fell into drugs and alcohol, and, you know, they'll show a close-up of the actor playing them looming over a glass of vodka in a foggy shot.
Because that's every single wrestler. I mean, you could just go through every single wrestler that passed away. He died that way. It's like, honestly.
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, you know, I wonder if they're going to do a Dr. Jerry Gray next episode.
Well, I mean, I think what they're probably going to do, I think they're probably going to do Brian Pillman at some point.
I would think so.
Yeah.
I would not be shocked if they do Dynamite Kid.
Dynamite Kid. There's so many guys that, like, from, like, I'm telling you, they're just going to do 80s and forward. They're not, like, the older stuff. And they should. I think they should try some of the older stuff, just because I think there's a lot of fans that maybe don't realize that there was crazy stuff going on back in the day, too.
It's true. In fact, you know, as crazy as I thought it, you know, was, sometimes I hear stories that are even crazier than I previously realized. You know, it's funny. I remember when I started getting smartened up in, you know, the early 80s, you know, a number of wrestlers who, you know, pretty intelligent people, not just, you know, people who fell off a bus, you know, a lot of them believed some of the weirdest urban myths in wrestling, one of them being that Bruno's victory over Buddy Rogers was an actual shoot. And a lot of, you know, despite what guys will tell you, a lot of guys really believed that back then. A lot of the knowledgeable people in the biz believed it was a shoot. But where was I going with this? Oh my God, I'm getting old. Oh, I know where I was going with this. What it was I used to think, wow, there's a lot of crazy shit that happens in wrestling.
Yeah.
And then as I got older, I realized, a lot of that stuff is just urban myth or stuff that was greatly exaggerated by wrestlers. But sometimes when you find out the actual truth, it's just as strange. It just doesn't come out quite as well in an anecdote or a beer drinking story. But it's equally strange.
I think the hard thing now is that they did the Owen Hart episode, and it's going to be so hard to, like, captivate an audience after that. It's going to be a little hard. If you're just,
I agree.
I mean, because it's like, if you're going to go with stories with, oh, so-and-so did drugs and he passed away, it's like, yeah, I mean, that's everyone. I mean, everybody's gone through that.
Before you know it, everybody who was a non-wrestling fan who watches those episodes saying, wow, wrestlers are the biggest junkies on the face of this earth.
Yeah. I mean, there's got to be, like, I think the Dino Bravo one was good also. I thought that was good.
That was good, yeah.
Yeah, the Dr. D one, I actually found more entertaining, just because we were at Cauliflower Alley Club, and his speech bored the hell out of me. That this was way better than that. I grew to appreciate him a little more.
Yeah, well, I'll have to check that one out next time.
And John Stossel's a total dick on there also. So.
Stossel's such a douchebag. Yeah. You know, when I was a little kid, Soupy Sales used to have a show where, it was like a, you know, funny, silly half-hour kids show, and every show would end with him trying to finish the episode without getting a pie in his face. But every episode would end with somebody somehow throwing a pie in his face, and he'd have this disheveled look. I would like to have a half-hour weekly series with John Stossel, and no matter how hard he tries, he gets smacked across the head at the end of every episode. That would be a sweet, sweet series.
If you watch the Dr. D episode, you're going to want Dr. D to slap him again. That's how bad he is.
That's what I've heard. What little I've heard.
Yes.
I've been noticing people on Facebook and Twitter saying, "God damn, Stas is a douchebag," and I agree with them.
Yeah. I mean, I enjoy the series just because, anything that's going to look into wrestling, and they could do it and they've done it very well. They haven't gone, I do kind of think the New Jack one was a little too off, like a little too weird, but, and the Road Warriors one was.
I've heard that. I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I'm ready to. I heard that one was kind of.
They probably could have done, but it's like they're all good. I don't think we're expecting. I think what the problem is that you're expecting like death in these, and maybe some of them aren't supposed to have death. So like it's a little bit easier to watch.
Yeah, because you have to remember, this is probably catering towards, I'm sure a lot of us picture that there are people like us watching this, but I bet you they're catering this to a lot of casual fans, and you have to put it in a nutshell. You have 45 minutes to get your story told.
Yeah.
So you can't go as in depth as we would like to, like in a book or a newsletter or something like that.
Did they do one on the Montreal Screwjob?
Yeah, I didn't watch.
Yeah, I skipped that.
I've heard that story a million times, and I don't care if I never hear that story again.
I was trying to remember because I'm pretty sure I skipped one, and that was the one because I so burned out on the whole Montreal Screwjob thing.
I am, and it's like while I was a Bret Hart fan when it came to whose side I was on that one. Eventually, I just got so tired of hearing him bitch and moan about it, and then expect everybody to just, be okay with him going back to WWF and making amens. I'm so tired of hearing about that.
Well, I mean, personally, the fact that he went to WWE after his brother died, I think that's even worse than the whole Screwjob thing.
I did too.
Yeah.
I did too. Hey, I know a lot. I know. There's some folks who would agree with me wholeheartedly, but a lot who would say I'm awful for saying this, but I totally back Martha. If she wants to keep injecting and needling Vince McMahon WWE, I have no problem with that.
Yeah,
that was her husband, and that was her kid's father. I mean, they want her to just get over it. My God.
Yeah, well, I think that's about it for this episode, Kurt. You wanna end the show now, or do you want to continue on during this time where you can't go out?
Yes, why don't we echo this one out? Why don't we go into the next astral plane? I just want to finish off by telling you what a beautiful night I had last night, Fredo. Elena went to go hang with her bro Ants, get a little bro-sis bonding time and just catch up. So I got a bottle of cheap Australian wine, and I smoked this stuff called Willie's Reserve brand sativa, and I mixed it with another strain. I can't remember what it was, but it's 36% THC. I started cleaning the house. I scrubbed the floors. Do you know what I was blaring on my headphones for most of that time when I was cleaning the house? And if you could see how clean my house, your mind would be blown.
What?
I'm not the neatest person in the world, but you saw how immaculate the house looked right now.
What was it? Cannibal Corpse? No.
Yes. Vomited anal tract song that I was listening to. I listened to the live Kelly family.
Oh, jeez.
It's the most Kelly family I listened to in one sitting, and I am in a weird place because I realize this is art. This is amazing, but they are the dorkiest band ever to set foot on a stage. They are like a mixture between real life family musical group and one of those Best in Show type mockumentaries where half the members are former cast members of Second City Television.
Hey, Fred Willard passed away recently too.
I know. Oh, that bummed me out.
Yeah. I was like, when they said he was 86, I was like, man, he's 86? It's like, damn.
I had no idea he was that old.
Yes.
I actually got to see him when I was in high school on a field trip. I actually got to see him and Martin Mull do a Fernwood Tonight taping.
Oh, wow.
Which was really cool. And he seemed like a cool guy. There were a whole bunch of, like, teenage girls who were there who had a little Fred Willard fan club.
What?
Yeah, they were all excited. And I got to say, in between the shoots, when they were yelling his name, he actually went there and actually spent time and chatted with them and did autographs.
That's cool.
You know, I don't know if he is that cool all the time, but he seemed like a good guy, and he was funny. So I guess that's a good way to end the show, to give a salutation to a man, Fred Willard, whose life was well lived, very entertaining cat. And let's do this again really soon. I really miss these LuchaWorld podcasts, and it is a good time to wind it up, because I'm starting to stammer over my own words. So until then, ladies and gentlemen, stay safe, stay home, and while the right hemisphere of the brain short-circuits the left hemisphere, then the left hemisphere shall short-circuit the right hemisphere, and bing, you're there. Adios, ladies.